Welcome to your Branch Out podcast, where we explore communication, markets, digital behavior, and business signals shaping Southeast Asia.
Glad to be here.
So imagine walking into a pitch meeting in Jakarta, right? You're delivering the exact same polished, data-heavy presentation that literally just won you millions in Singapore.
Yeah.
And you just watch the investors completely tune you out. I mean, you have the same product, the same traction, but suddenly the room just goes cold.
Happens all the time.
Right. And today, we are looking at exactly why that happens. Because if you are a startup founder, an SME owner, or a regional operator listening to this right now, the ground beneath your feet has shifted dramatically.
It really has. The whole landscape of Southeast Asian venture capital in, well, mid-2025 now is just completely different.
Completely. And the rules of how you must communicate to build trust or secure capital and actually survive in this market they've transformed. So our mission today is to decode this current capital reset across the region.
Which is so needed right now.
Yeah, we're going to examine market by market how you need to adapt your visibility to survive and scale. Because what worked in 2021 is actively working against you today.
Absolutely actively working against you.
So let's unpack the macro signal first. The numbers from Q1 2025 are just staggering. Funding rounds in Southeast Asia are down 32% from the previous quarter.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're a massive 59% lower year over year. Overall venture activity has slowed by over 85% since the 2021 peak.
Right, but there's a twist in the data there, right?
Exactly. Here's the twist. The total dollars invested actually grew to $2.5 billion.
Which tells us something profound about the underlying mechanics of investor psychology right now. I mean, the total pie of capital hasn't necessarily shrunk, but the way it's being sliced has fundamentally changed.
Yeah, the way I'm interpreting this structural shift is it's like moving from a chaotic all-you-can-eat buffet to a highly exclusive reservation-only dining room.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. During the zero interest rate years, the buffet was just open to everyone. If you had a pitch deck and a pulse, you got a plate.
You definitely got a plate, sometimes two.
Exactly. But now, there are far fewer plates coming out of the kitchen, but the checks are significantly larger. The growth at all costs era, that whole blitzscale mindset, is dead.
Oh, completely dead. In its place, the sources highlight the rise of the, what they call the resilient founder.
The resilient founder.
Yeah, capital R, capital S-E-A. These are operators who are building efficiently, keeping incredibly lean teams, and delaying fundraising to bootstrap until they have undeniable leverage.
Undeniable leverage.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to dig into the mechanics of those larger, fewer checks. Like, why is the capital behaving this way right now?
Well, to understand the psychology of the capital, you have to look at a metric called DPI.
DPI.
Yeah, distributions to paid-in capital. Basically, this is the actual cash return to the limited partners, the people who give the venture capitalists their money in the first place.
Okay, right.
And right now, DPI in Southeast Asia still trails the U.S. and Europe by about 15 to 25%.
So we are looking at a region where venture value is effectively stuck in unrealized outcomes.
Precisely. There's a massive amount of paper wealth sitting in these funds, but not enough actual liquid cash returns flowing back to the LPs.
Interesting.
So when an investor is sitting in an office in Singapore staring at a portfolio full of unrealized gains, their risk tolerance just plummets. They become hyper-selective.
They're not funding experiments anymore.
Exactly. They are funding credible, undeniable paths to profitability.
I understand the financial mechanism there, but let me challenge what this means for a founder's daily behavior.
Sure.
If I am running a logistics startup, and I know investors are obsessed with profitability, shouldn't my sole focus be on putting my head down and building a flawless product? Like, why am I worrying about a communication strategy right now?
Because we've moved into an era where your digital behavior and your professional branding are prerequisites for capital, not byproducts of it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the old playbook allowed you to build first, raise your Series A, and then, hire a PR firm to craft your narrative later.
Right. The stealth mode approach.
Exactly. But today, because capital is so scarce and so selective, investors, partners, and even your enterprise customers are forming their impressions of you long before a formal introduction ever happens.
So they're doing their homework early.
Very early. They are watching your digital footprint to gauge your competence.
So if I stay silent and just build, I am basically creating a vacuum.
You're creating a dangerous interpretation gap. When a founder or an SME leader is absent from the narrative, you don't just stay neutral, you cede the territory.
And someone else takes it?
Right. Competitors occupy that space. Skeptics control your story. Ecosystem trust now develops through repeated digital presence. You literally have to explain your operating reality and your decision-making process before the massive scale fully arrives.
That makes total sense. Silence is essentially handing the microphone to your competitors. But if visibility is now a prerequisite for capital, we have to recognize that Southeast Asia is not a single entity.
Not at all.
It is deeply fragmented. The playbook that makes you look like a genius in one city will absolutely ruin your credibility in another.
Oh, 100%.
So let's start with Singapore, which our sources note is the region's most structurally mature market. There is a massive structural shift happening here right now. Singapore just added 440 million Singapore dollars in public investment to accelerate deep tech.
That is a market-altering commitment from the government. I mean, it changes the center of gravity in the Singaporean startup ecosystem entirely.
But let me push back on how a founder should react to that.
Okay, go for it.
If I am a founder in Singapore and the government is throwing nearly $500 million at deep tech, things like AI, advanced manufacturing, quantum computing, shouldn't I immediately pivot my messaging? Like, shouldn't my LinkedIn start sounding like I am a frontier AI pioneer, even if my core product is just a solid enterprise software company? I want to fish where the money is.
Right. That is the exact trap that will render you uninvestable.
Really?
Yes. Mimicking the language of deep tech when you do not possess the fundamental architecture or, the PhD level talent for it will instantly destroy your trust in a tight-knit ecosystem like Singapore.
I think that they can see right through it.
Exactly. You have to understand the mechanics of what deep tech actually is. It requires 5 to 10 years of pure research and development just to reach meaningful commercialization.
Right.
Look at the example in our sources of Trax. It's a Singapore-based retail computer vision company. It was founded in 2010.
Okay.
15 years later, there is still no indicated exit timeline. Deep tech takes immense patience and really complex regulatory navigation.
So if I am running a vertical SaaS company, meaning, software tailored to solve a specific problem in a legacy industry like construction management or dental clinic booking, I shouldn't pretend to be an AI visionary.
No, please don't. If you start using exaggerated deep tech hype language to sell a vertical sauce product, sophisticated investors will spot it immediately. And ironically, those capital-efficient enterprise software companies are often the ones generating real revenue and actual cash flow right now.
Which is exactly what investors want.
Exactly. They are dealing with unique local complexities and solving immediate problems. In Singapore, investors and regional corporate headquarters overlap so closely that your visibility quickly becomes your reputational capital.
So if hype language is a death sentence in Singapore, how should a founder or an SME leader actually communicate there? What's the specific mechanism for building trust?
Singapore rewards what we call analytical authority.
Analytical authority.
Yeah. It is about emotional distance and high precision. Founders who become credible here publish concise, disciplined commentary.
So no motivational hustle culture posts.
Oh. Zero. They don't post motivational quotes. They share operational lessons. They dissect the unit economics of their industry, and they provide clear, data-backed interpretations of the market. Authority here comes from control and clarity.
So Singapore demands you prove your intellect from a distance. I want to contrast that immediately, because if a founder takes that exact same hyper-polished distance playbook and flies 2 hours north to Bangkok, they will completely isolate themselves.
Oh, absolutely. Distance is a massive liability in Thailand.
The rhythm of trust just changes entirely once you land there.
It's a completely different frequency.
Because the ecosystem in Thailand is accelerating incredibly fast. We are seeing over $520 million in disclosed funding flowing into hubs, and not just in Bangkok, but emerging tech clusters in Chiang Mai and Phuket, too.
Yeah, the growth is wild.
So what is the fundamental difference in how a founder must signal credibility there?
Well, in Thailand, trust is deeply, inextricably relational. Digital scale almost always follows physical and community presence. Our sources call it ecosystem recognition.
Ecosystem recognition. Meaning what, practically?
It means public credibility develops through participation. You become trusted because you repeatedly show up at startup events, university talks, and, just general ecosystem discussions.
Okay, let me stop you there because I know exactly what our listeners are thinking.
What's that?
Does ecosystem presence just mean a founder should spend all their time networking on panels, shaking hands, and posting selfies instead of actually building their product?
Yeah.
Because historically, That kind of founder is usually the one whose company quietly shuts down 2 years later.
That is a vital distinction to make. There is a massive difference between aggressive self-promotion and thoughtful ecosystem visibility.
Right.
The leaders who succeed in Thailand are not just boosting their own metrics, they are visibly lifting the entire ecosystem.
Like who?
Well, consider the real examples on the ground from the sources. Look at Ornik Memi Lurdswonki, who built Texas, or creating Poonpol with 500 tuk-tuks.
Oh, Texas is a great example. Mimi didn't just build a media company, she effectively built the connective tissue for the whole Thai startup scene.
Exactly. And how did she build that trust? By connecting ideas, mentoring early-stage teams, and relentlessly promoting cross-border collaboration.
She showed up for other people.
Yes. For a founder operating in Thailand today, visibility means proving you are a community builder. It is not about standing on a stage talking about how great your app's user retention is.
Right, no one cares about your vanity metric.
Exactly. It's about showing how your company fits into the broader ambition of making Thailand a regional innovation powerhouse. You build trust by demonstrating that your local ideas are globally ready and that you are bringing the rest of the community along with you.
That is such a fascinating contrast.
Yeah.
So Singapore demands proof of intellect, Thailand demands proof of community investment.
Perfectly summarized.
But let's keep moving south, because the rules of trust shift yet again when we cross into Indonesia and Malaysia. This really highlights the danger of treating Southeast Asia as a single communication monolith, doesn't it?
It's the biggest mistake founders make.
So let's look at Indonesia first. If I take that polished, analytical, Singaporean corporate style into a circle in Jakarta, what happens?
You will fundamentally underperform?
Just flat out fail.
Pretty much. The audience in Indonesia responds powerfully to accessibility and operational reality. If you are a founder who waits for pristine, formal milestones like a Series A announcement or a flawless product launch to communicate with the market, you will simply be drowned out by the noise.
Why is raw reality so much more effective there?
Think about the geography and the market mechanics of Indonesia. It is a massive, highly fragmented archipelago with incredibly complex logistics and supply chains.
Right.
Operating a business there is inherently chaotic. When a founder shares short reflections on the daily, unpolished realities of operating a business, they appear reachable. They appear genuine.
It's the difference between issuing a pristine press release about a new logistics feature versus writing a raw, honest diary entry on LinkedIn about, a total supply chain failure in rural Java and how your team scrambled for 48 hours to fix it.
Exactly.
The press release builds awareness, but the raw story builds a bond. It signals to the market that you are actually close to the ground.
Precisely. The closer you seem to the chaotic reality of the market, the more the Indonesian market trusts you.
Okay, but then we look at neighboring Malaysia, and the primary lever for communication isn't just about polished versus unpolished.
No, it's very different.
It is literally about the mechanical tool of language. Language in Malaysia is a strategic operational tool. It shapes perceived credibility.
It really does.
I look at Malaysia's communication landscape like a dual-key security system. If you want to fully unlock the market, you need both keys, and you have to know which lock you are trying to turn. In Malaysia, choosing a language is actually choosing an audience.
That dual key analogy perfectly captures the dynamic. Let's look at the mechanics of it. If you are in an investor-facing environment in Kuala Lumpur pitching to a sovereign wealth fund or a major venture firm speaking English carries a very specific type of authority.
Right.
It acts as a signal of global readiness, structural competence, and financial literacy.
That is the first key. It unlocks the financial compliance gate.
Yes, but if you take that exact same English-only corporate approach and apply it to a broader public discussion or consumer-facing visibility, you risk creating immense distance.
You alienate people.
Exactly. Speaking Malay drastically increases relatability and trust with the wider market. It signals that you are fundamentally grounded in the local culture.
So a founder's digital behavior in Malaysia must include the ability to seamlessly code switch.
It is mandatory. It is not just about translating what you say, it is about signaling that you belong to the right audience at the right time.
Right.
You are actively tuning your frequency to match the trust signal you need in that specific room, whether it is the boardroom or the public square.
Okay, let's synthesize this regional tour. We've looked at the mechanics of analytical precision in Singapore, ecosystem building in Thailand, raw accessibility in Indonesia, and strategic code switching in Malaysia.
Quite the tour.
It really is. But across all these distinct markets, the source material points to one universal penalty. The market is severely punishing what they call imitation visibility.
Ugh, imitation visibility. It is the plague of the current digital landscape.
It really is.
It happens when a leader posts frequently but says absolutely nothing of substance.
We all know exactly what this looks like, right? It is the generic hustle culture post on LinkedIn. It's a picture of a founder looking pensively at a mountain, accompanied by a recycled slogan about grinding to 247 or some superficial comment about how AI is the future.
Yeah, and it might get you a temporary spike in algorithmic attention, but it results in incredibly weak long-term authority.
Because investors see right through it.
Oh, instantly. In a market where capital is hyper-selective, investors and partners view imitation visibility as a signal of shallow thinking. If your public thoughts are generic, they assume your business strategy is generic too.
Which brings us to the practical application of all this. If we distill the source materials down, there is a core framework. There are 3 specific signals of legibility that build true mechanical credibility across all Asian markets.
Yes.
Let's walk through exactly how a listener can apply them tomorrow.
Okay, so the first signal is interpretation. This means clearly explaining what you are seeing in the market. You are not just acting as a reporter of numbers, you are providing the context of what those numbers mean specifically for your sector.
Let me give you an example of that. It's the difference between saying, our logistics company saw a 20% increase in revenue this quarter, and saying, our revenue's up 20% because we noticed a specific shift in how Tier 2 cities in Indonesia are handling last-mile returns, and here's how we adapted our routing algorithms to capture that.
Exactly.
You are showing your homework.
That is a perfect execution of interpretation. The second signal is decision logic.
Decision logic.
Right. This involves explaining exactly why a strategic choice was made. Audiences, especially investors who are scrutinizing your competence, want to see your analytical machinery, not just the final product.
Right, the why behind the what.
Exactly. If you pivoted your product line, or if you decided not to expand into a new country, you need to publicly walk them through the variables you considered before making that call.
You are effectively open sourcing your brain.
Basically, yeah.
But I am looking at the notes here for the third signal, which is limits. And honestly, this feels highly counterintuitive.
It does at first.
The sources suggest acknowledging what remains uncertain or publicly discussing failed assumptions. Are you really telling founders to broadcast their failures in a market where capital is already terrified of risk?
It sounds dangerous, but it is actually the ultimate flex of competence.
Really? How so?
Let's look at the psychology behind it. If a founder claims they have a flawless model and zero market uncertainty, sophisticated investors immediately know they are either lying or incredibly naive.
Right, because nothing is flawless.
Exactly. By admitting your limits by saying, we assumed this pricing model would work in Malaysia, but the data proved us wrong, and here is why, you are proving that you know exactly where the edges of your operational model are.
That makes a lot of sense.
Admitting you don't have all the answers yet makes your successes far more believable.
You are showing that your feedback loops actually function.
Exactly.
I want to bring this entire framework home for the listener who might not be a venture-backed tech founder. Maybe you are listening to this and you run a mid-sized traditional logistics firm or, a generational family business in manufacturing. This 3-part framework, interpretation, decision logic, and limits, is equally critical for SME owners and traditional operators.
Absolutely. The foundational dynamics of trust do not care about your corporate structure or whether you have a venture capital term sheet.
Because when SME leadership remains silent, the company voice defaults to generic marketing copy. Your differentiation just weakens.
It really does.
In a highly relational region like Southeast Asia, visible, articulate leadership gives a smaller business disproportionate credibility. If an SME owner is out there sharing their interpretation of regional supply chain bottlenecks, explaining their decision logic on why they are adopting a specific inventory software, and admitting the limits of their current warehouse capacity, they are easily positioning themselves miles ahead of a silent competitor.
They transform from a faceless vendor into a legible, known entity. And in a market that relies so heavily on relationship capital, being legible is half the battle.
I want to leave everyone with one final thought to mull over before we close. If digital visibility is now a prerequisite for capital and trust, what happens to the operators who refuse to adapt?
They get left behind.
Right. The invisible but competent company doesn't usually become a market leader anymore. They become an acquisition target, bought at a steep discount by a competitor who simply told a better story. Your digital footprint, your ability to navigate the local signals of trust that is literally part of your valuation now. You cannot afford to be invisible.
Well said.
This market is evolving fast, but the real opportunity belongs to those who understand how local trust is built before they try to scale visibility. That closes our discussion for today. Thank you for listening to Branch Out by Y Consulting, where we examine the signals shaping business across Southeast Asia. Keep watching the signals. We'll speak with you again in the next episode.